questions. When I'm doing interviews with people, there's usually three things I'm interested in. What's going well, what's new and interesting is the way Bhante usually puts it. Because as you know, this practice works off the leading edge of where we are. And so how things are unfolding is really helpful. Another question that's helpful is what's difficult? You know, because we all run into problems with the practice, and if we can do something to lighten those up or clear those up, then the rest is easy. And the other question to be helpful is what do you wonder about? You know, where's your curiosity? So what I would like to do, and see if we can, is to just open it up and hear from you. You can use any of those three questions, or even just talk a little bit about what's going on in your practice, and then that gives me something to respond to. Otherwise, I'm just sort of guessing at what might be useful. Doctor, good to see you.
Yeah. Doug, sometimes what happens when I'm meditating for long hours, I automatically exhale through mouth sometimes. I feel that gas is wound up in my head and it comes out through mouth. Is it normal? Shall I stop it or let it happen?
Oh, well, you're probably about to die, so no. Yeah, what I would say is as long as you are not, you know, consciously or willfully trying to control what's happening, you're probably better off just let it unfold, you know, the way it will. The body is something that we travel with. It's really not who we are, but it hangs around. And so, you know, some openness to what's going on and seeing what's there is helpful. And putting too much effort into mold it and to do something that fits our vision of correctness is usually not, you know, terribly helpful. So I imagine many of you have had things where there's just these involuntary responses come out of the system, and trying to control them is just trying to insert yourself, you know, on top of what's going on, which is not so helpful. It's a great question. Thanks.
Come on, any other questions for Doug? I'm pretty sure you guys have lots.
All right, well, I can ask one here. So,
hi, Austin.
Hey, Doug, good to see you. So, do you have any sort of general advice for bringing up the meta feeling when it's sort of subtle? You know, it's one of those things where some sits, it's pretty straightforward. It just comes about. Sometimes I'm just patient and it comes out. And sometimes I think I'm being patient, but I'm really pushing in a very subtle way. And, you know, it's certainly been helpful for me to kind of hear some of those subtleties described in different ways by different people. I was just wondering if you had any specific advice there.
Yeah, there's this little prayer, God give me patience and I want it right now. So the flip side of that is with patience, anything is possible. You know, really, it's a matter of unfolding. Yeah, I think probably, you know, in the TWIM meta, the most difficult aspect of it is actually what you're talking about, you know, because it's based on an uplifted qualities. And so if they are there, that's great, you know, and you just kind of settle in and open up. But if they're not there, then what you do? And it's very easy to get in a trying or pushing too hard, etc. And in the standard instructions, you know, as David was given, you can see there's a whole kind of skillful way of working with that. You know, Bhante talks a lot about smiling, just because you can do it mechanically, and it tends to bring up those uplifted qualities. I work with a variety of people, including some who actually don't have that much of a meditation practice. And so I've had to, look at some different ways to get at this. And I'll see if I can do this quickly. It's what I call the spectrum of awareness, which I found just extraordinarily helpful. From the way the mind is designed by evolutionary forces, awareness is all about the external world. Right? Two people are walking through the primeval forest, and there's a piece of fruit on that tree, and there's a saber-toothed tiger over there. Well, the person who ignored the tiger and went for the fruit gets taken out of the gene pool really quickly. The one who deals with the difficulty, first may, hang around longer. So it's like our awareness from an evolutionary standpoint is all about the external world. And so it's very easy for us to be aware of thoughts and contents and stories and all that stuff. But then the question becomes, how do you get that awareness to come back in and look at the quality of awareness? So, and I think this is probably the most difficult part of the TWIM meta-based practice is how to get from, if you come in and sit down and you're feeling grumpy and they say, well, bring up some uplifted qualities, and it's so easy. And all of us have probably fallen into the trap of trying to artificially produce those. And then what you get is the trying to feel the metta, not the metta, but to feel the trying. And so the whole question is, how do you skillfully get there? I think Bhante's, primary method, and one works very, very well, actually starts with a smiling, because it's something you can do mechanically, and it just tends to trigger that. And so that's kind of the fallback. I also work with some people who don't have much of a meditation practice, so I've been sort of challenged to figure out how to teach this with people who are not committed to it. And what I notice is that when the mind is just really caught up in the content, it's thinking, it's got stories, it's got all that stuff going, the shift over to uplifted qualities can feel like it's a big one. But when you're in the midst of all that stuff, if you just notice the processes that are going on in the mind, right? So I'm thinking, I'm worrying, my mind likes to explain things, so oftentimes it'll just spit off and go off and start doing all these explanations. So if you just shift from the content of the mind to the processes, that's a fairly small shift. And then once you can feel the processes going on, it's very easy to feel the qualities in the mind, whether it's thick or tight or loose or uplifted or dense or busy or sluggish. And so shifting from the processes that are going on to the qualities is not that big a shift. Okay. And once you're into the qualities, then there's a difference between the uplifted and the denser ones, and that's just a matter of tension, right? So once you can notice the qualities in the mind, you start noticing where the tension is. And the marvelous thing about noticing the tension is you don't actually have to get rid of it. Once you start noticing the tension, just the awareness coming to the tension tends to soften it, and just on its own, will dissipate. And once it dissipates, then you're into the uplifted qualities, which is where the metta practice, as Bhante teaches it, begins. And so when you're on a retreat, or that you're sitting on a daily basis, etc., it's not that big a jump to just kind of go straight into the uplifted qualities. But if you're not used to doing that, it can be hard to figure out how to get there. And what happens is people feel like they're, faking it. They try to just conjure this up through sheer willpower, which doesn't work so well. But if you're sitting there and the mind is spinning, you'll notice it's probably dealing with content. You can always shift to the activities that are going on. I'm thinking, I'm worrying, I'm fretting, I'm congratulating myself, I'm condemning the mind for being so irascible. If you can notice those sort of the doings that are going on there, and once you notice that, it's easy to notice the qualities, and from that it goes right into metta. So that so you can use that spectrum of awareness as what I call it to move gently. And you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm imagining for those of you who've been doing this a long time, you still get to times when the mind just kind of gets caught and sort of spinning off. And I think if you come back to that spectrum, it'll actually move through it fairly quickly. And the nice thing about it is it doesn't take a lot of push. It doesn't take a lot of effort. Our mind will naturally move in that direction. Does that make sense to people? Is that?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I myself, normally my mind is always very agitated and like restless. I'm always been like this, and I've been struggling with this, past a year and a half of this, when I started this meditation. So yeah, like I'm kind of like. Get it what you are saying. Sometimes I can even notice myself like, my mind is out there going, here and there and jumping, and then, can't come back to, metta, loving kindness part of it yet, but I just have to detach a little bit and watch it. Oh, wait a minute, this is what is happening, and let it be, and then slowly come back down. So I really get it. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. No, you're welcome. And so when you practice in meditation, just the smiling, and kind of bring that up. But if the mind is agitated and jumping around like that, there is just, how can I say that? Is that relatively pure awareness has an inherently calming quality to it. So that if the mind is jumping around and you sit there and rather than fight with it, you just kind of sit back and say, wow, we're just off the races today. And just see the racing mind. The awareness that's looking at the racing mind is actually a little calmer.
Yes.
And you don't have to do it.
Yes.
So to just see the restlessness, which is, one of the qualities in the mind, has a calming effect.
Yeah, it is. It's really wonderful that way, and it is truly amazing this mind is.
Yes. Well, and the other thing that happens with that, it's one thing for you to calm your mind, right? Then you've got a you and a mind in the struggle and see who wins the intramural battle there, something like that, as opposed to just watching and observing what's there and just and creating a lot of space, for the mind to run all over the place. And what you begin to experience is less the mind running around and more the space in which it runs around. And the space tends to be quieter. And then as the mind quiets down, you're not so much exerting a lot of will to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually just relaxing into the busyness of the mind. And when you relax into the busyness, you get more of the relaxation than the busyness.
Mm-hmm.
And it does it by itself. And so the less effort you have to put into it, the more stable it becomes.
Right.
So the biggest mistake people make early on in meditation is when the mind is off to the races of trying to control it. And then you get this kind of mind that's sort of, hanging on by your fingernails. But if you can sit back and say, wow, the mind is really crazy today. Not you, but the mind is really crazy today. And you just sort of watch with a little bit of kind of innocent wonder just this thing zipping around. And that quality of sitting back and watching has a soothing effect on it. And in time, that's why I was saying in the beginning, you know, with patience, we can do anything. It takes some patience to allow, well, and as Bhante would say, that usually when the mind is out zipping around like that, it's because it's got too much energy into it. So if you put a lot of energy into holding that down, it just gets more and more. But if you just give it a lot of space, then it just tends to run out on its own. And then when it quiets, you haven't made it quiet. You don't have to hold it in quiet. It just emerges, you know, on its own, and then you can just relax into it, and it becomes a lot stable.
Yeah. You know, I think it's the opposite of this restlessness mind. Of course, it's a sloth and torpor. For me, it's like I'm not normally very less sloth and torpor, but time to time, like I even feel like, oh, today I'm not interested. So how can we improve that? Like,
well, you know, if you're not interested in the sloth and torpor, then there's nothing grabbing it, and then, you know, and then it can drain off. So sloth and torpor has tension in it. Yeah, because particularly early in my practice, you know, sloth and torpor was my favorite hindrance. Well, or it favored me anyway. It would just, it was just there all over the place. And what I realized was going on was there was sloth and torpor, and then I had aversion to the sloth and torpor. I didn't want it there. I wanted a peaceful mind. So there's sloth and torpor, and on top of that, there's some aversion. And so, you know, the thing just gets thicker and thicker, but part of the sloth and torpor is you don't see things so clearly.
yes.
So if you can just see the sloth and torpor clearly, what is it that you're actually experiencing that you're calling sloth and torpor? You know, and usually there's a bunch of little things. And as you just look actually with some curiosity at what's actually going on there, that sort of gently brings in some mindfulness and allows the sloth and torpor to have some agitation in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just buried underneath. And then as that gets seen, it has a tendency to you know, to kind of work itself out and come into clarity.
Mm-hmm.
The difficulty, yeah, sloth and torpor was my favorite hindrance for a long time, and it's just, you know, it's had it all over the place. So I think the first approach is actually just gently bringing more and more awareness and just saying, oh, my mind is really fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
And the awareness that sees the fuzziness is actually clear. It's actually relatively clear. And over the long run, it's that clarity will begin to dominate.
Right.
But if this sort of soft touch doesn't work, then you give it a while, and then you can bring in some heavier duty, you know, techniques.
Okay.
Like one is just to meditate with the eyes open.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, just quiet, and with the eyes open, there will be a certain amount of stimulus coming in.
Yes.
Just from the seeing, and that can, you know, bring more awareness, so you can see the sloth and torpor more. And there are other techniques to go right up to, if all else fails, just get up and go into a walking meditation.
Right.
Because chances are you will be more aware when you're walking, otherwise you run into walls, you know. So, but I would always move towards the techniques that have the least amount of willpower brought into them. And so the place to begin with it all is to just bring more and more awareness. How do I know that there's sloth and torpor here? Well, there's this tightness and this density, you know, and as you can see, that brings in more and more awareness.
Right. Okay.
What are some other techniques that people have used to deal with sloth and torpor?
like sloth, for me, sloth is a little bit easier, right? Like, I mean, easier meaning like, just like you say, you will get up and work, or like sometimes I do standing up, so that like torpor's the one that it's a bit more trouble, because like your mind become like so fuzzy, you don't even know that you are out, until for a while. Rarely happen because of I'm on the other spectrums, like always agitated and restless. But last retreat with Bande, I noticed that it's because of Bande said back off. You have too much energy to it, so I'm trying to back off. I'm way off, and then I kind of lost. This is why I'm trying to struggle a bit. It's like, how can I go back to be interested in my meditation objects, right?
Well, if you are disinterested in your meditation object, you can become interested in your disinterest. How you know you're not, to just bring in a little bit of curiosity to see what's there. So the tricky thing that you're getting, that you may be getting into is, in our society, in our culture, most of us are a little overworked.
Yep.
And I have found that it was a hard lesson for me to learn, because I always thought my default method was to plow through something.
Yep.
And sloth and torpor are actually very difficult to plow through, because of what's going on underneath is there just is not as much physical energy.
Yes.
As that you need. And I may get into trouble for saying this, but what I have found sometimes is you try some of these techniques, and if they don't work, go take a nap.
Yeah.
And then, because I found, and this is particularly on retreats, because I would struggle, with all this stuff. And then I finally gave up, and I went off and I took a nap, and maybe I slept for an hour and a half, and I got up, and for the next 3 hours, my meditation was just clear.
Right.
There was just not enough physical energy there. And so we need to have this kind of respectful relationship to what's going on in our system. And as the meditation gets deeper and the mind gets quieter and stuff, you can actually sit through some of that with clear awareness. But it doesn't, I have found, for me personally, it is just not helpful to try to push through those stuff too much. Yeah, bring a little bit of effort or something like that. I'm a great believer in empirical trials. You try bringing a little more energy, and if that doesn't work, you try something else,
Right.
and until you find it.
Right. Another way I think it's like works for me is sometimes I'm really, really tough days, but I'm not quite, sleepy, but I just don't, zoned out. I'm not interested in. It's like sometimes I put any Dharma talk, with the headphone on, and then I sit with that, right? Then it's a little bit more interesting, and, coming back down to, and then like enough time, then I shut it off and I resit through it. So that's, I don't know, it works for me. That's one way of I'm dealing with the torpor. Yeah, but it's quite rare, just like I say. Anybody else has questions for Doug? It's a great opportunity, guys.
Yes, I have a question, Doug. I'm Sandani, actually from Sri Lanka originally. Now live in Canada. My background is Buddhism, basically grade 3 or 4 I was learning Buddhism, but meditation practice I came here. And my question is, I started with breathing and I stopped that. Then I was going through with the Bante's one. And now I feel when I finish my meditation practice, somewhere in the frontal lobe is a lightness and the coldness. And the very less thoughts. And while I was working in the house or kitchen, I feel something very light, not fast thought is coming. When I'm not thinking or something, very, very light sensation most of the time in here. Is it a good sign, or I just want to know it's what kind of a thing?
Yeah. You're about to die. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I would say, you know, there are meditation practices that really push too hard, and people can get into trouble by, you know, trying too hard, et cetera, et cetera. The way Bhante teaches, it does not push too hard.
Yeah, I'm not pushing. Yeah.
And I have not seen anything rise spontaneously that I would say is problematic. Like I say, it's really when people are trying to do an override or pushing something like this, but the way Bhante teaches it is actually very accepting. And so the mind will tend to unfold itself. And there can be all kinds of strange little, you know, sensations here, there, etc. And my experience with it, you know, with my own and with other people's, is that they're all perfectly safe. And a lot of them are transient. Part of what happens is that, so if we're looking at this area, if there's extra tension in here, you know, that will tighten up. And as that tightens up, it actually squeezes against the blood vessels. And so there's a little less blood there. And so it kind of numbs out. And if you do that a lot, the slight numbness may feel normal to you. It's what your normal is. And then you get into this practice where there's a lot of relaxing and opening, and this will soften, and more blood gets in there, and you get more sensations, and they're brand new, and say, well, what's this? Is this a problem? In my experience, it rarely is. It's what's happening is that your body is waking up. It's just becoming more sensitive.
Yeah, that's what I feel.
Yeah, and I think it's
a light. It's a light feeling, not
yeah.
tough, and I can see different personality on me. Earlier, I was like rushing all the thoughts, and it's a heavy thing. But now I feel it's very. I'm not that rushing girl now.
Yeah.
Something become lighter, I feel.
Yeah. No, I think you can trust it, and I think with the way Bhante teaches this, it's almost, I would say it's the default intervention. It's just to trust it, you know, and including, you know, as it goes deeper, if there's a little bit of worry, yeah, I'm wondering if this is okay. You can even just open up to the worry, and just relax into the worry, and it will all tend to dissipate. And if there is some problem with what you're doing, it will make itself apparent. But otherwise, there are just all kinds of strange.
Yeah, and even the emotions start. Anything starting, I get to know something is starting, and it's some awareness is very clear. Before I wasn't that aware.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting some awareness very clearly.
Yeah. No, I think those are all good signs, and all of us have places where we're numb, mentally, physically, emotionally.
Yeah.
And as this practice goes deeper, those will soften and loosen up, and there will be new things that show up.
Yeah.
And kind of an openness and curiosity is just the kind of, you don't want to get over involved with it, but it's like, oh, okay, there's that, you know, cool, you know, you just.
Yeah. Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome. It's a good question.
Anyone?
Yes, I wanted to just make an observation more than a question.
Good.
In regards to smiling. Of all the things that Bhante teaches, I'm just amazed at how powerful smiling is. There's just been countless times when I've been upset or agitated while meditating, or upset at a family member, and I'll sit and relax and smile, or just smile, and then relaxation will just sweep over me. And the same with agitation during meditating. I'm just amazed time and time again at how powerful a simple smile is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think part of it, particularly those of us from Western culture, is we don't realize it, but how much the idea of original sin is kind of deeply baked into us, even if we don't intellectually believe that.
Yeah.
It's this default place that says, well, if I'm just going along normal, something's wrong. And it's just,
Yes.
and actually the truth is just the opposite. You know, as you relax into and open up to stuff, our system has an amazing capacity to just actually work itself out.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And of course, the other thing that Bhante will say about smiling, which I think is really true, is that it tends to we tend to think that we have feelings and that causes us to do certain things, but it actually works both ways.
Yeah.
And so when you smile, it brings up the places inside that just naturally know what it's like to feel good. And it may seem a little strange, you know, from a Western philosophical perspective, it should work that way, but it obviously does. You smile a little bit and it just reminds the system of its inherent lightness. And yeah, as you say, it's just such a simple thing. I mean, it's a delightful little maneuver.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello. Hi, Doug.
Hi.
Hello, everybody else. Oh, my mind is like really anxious right now because I had a lot of coffee. And I've been
Well, don't say anything stupid.
But yeah, I just wanted to say that I saw the talk you gave. I think it was like the Google talk.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what year it was.
It was a number of years ago.
Yeah, Austin showed it to me, and I really related to the part where you were talking about, like you were like walking around like a hotel room and just like overcome with a lot of anxiety, and then you just like stopped and you kind of like gave into it. And when I heard you say that, I don't know, it was like a turning point in my mind for my meditative practice. And ever since I saw that video, I've been able to meditate a lot easier because I just kind of like, I just like relax into it. And I've been, you know, I've been escaping my body and like my feelings all my life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So being able to like come home to my body and like being able to sit with it and just like know that it's going to be okay has been really helpful. So I just wanted to thank you for that talk that you did.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It sort of gets back to the stuff about original sin that's so baked into the West too. We just assume that if we're at a neutral place, we're doing something wrong. And it's way back there behind there. But our system really has an amazing capacity to heal itself, given half a chance.
Yeah, and I like how you said of like if like the dullness you were talking about, like when I'm dull, I kind of just go into it and I take a nap and like that works for me. I don't know. I've been like I've been meditating for a couple of years now, but I think the best thing for me is to just like let it happen.
Yes. Yeah, I would say to let it happen with a quieting mind and an opening heart. You know, and to just let things settle in there. That there is this deep wisdom that's built into our system at given half a chance. That's great.
Thank you so much. It was really nice to talk to you. I appreciate you being here.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. And anyone else? Like maybe one more?
Yeah, I had a question about how to deal with restlessness. The dullness doesn't really bother me too much. I can deal with that, but I try to 6R away like itches and urges to reposition and stuff like that, and I can do that okay. But sometimes it just builds and builds and builds until I just feel like I want to explode, and it's just
Okay.
that's the hard one for me.
Yeah, there's a lot of people nodding, so I think that's a familiar place to a lot of people. Oh, what happened to my screen here? I just okay, there's back. Yeah, sloth and torpor has been my go-to hindrance, and that as I got a certain way, some restlessness, began to come in the other side of the spectrum, and I realized, that the restlessness actually feels worse. It gets in your system, and this may be obvious, but it's just to be sure we're all in the same place with this. Part of the difficulty with restlessness is that there's a tendency to want to get rid of it. I think I heard you say something like 6R something in a way.
Yeah.
The difficulty with the 6Rs, the real difficulty with the 6Rs is that you recognize what's there. That's not trying to change anything, just recognize it. You release it, which is kind of just let it be. There's nothing trying to get rid of it. You notice any tension, you relax the tension. Then you bring in some uplifted qualities, and then you go back to your object of meditation. There's nothing in the 6Rs that has to do with getting rid of anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually just a skillful way to be with it. But the problem with it is when you use the 6Rs, after a while the mind realizes, oh, when I do the 6Rs, these bad feelings will go away. And so then you start using the 6Rs for the purpose of getting rid of something. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you do that, they stop working. Right? Because the 6Rs have been co-opted by aversion at that particular point. And so all you have to do is just actually realize that you're using the 6Rs in the service of aversion, and come back and to realize there's nothing in them about getting rid of anything. It's how to be with what is, and it's sort of like when you sit back and just let the restlessness run through you without fighting it. What happens is it builds up a little bit, and then it just starts to dissipate because there's nothing fighting it. But if you try to fight the restlessness, then then you're compressing it. It's sort of like how you make a hand grenade. You put a lot of gunpowder in a very small case, and then it, when it goes. And what we're doing is just trying to take the casing off the hand grenade and all that stuff, and just let the gunpowder just kind of spread itself out, and then maybe a spark will go in and it goes, and it's gone. It's not a big deal. The default answer to all these things is the 6R, and if the 6Rs don't seem to be working so well, then just spend a little bit longer with the recognition and see if you were using the 6Rs for the purpose of getting rid of something. Mm-hmm. And if you can feel that a little bit of aversion in there, that pushing away, as you can see that, then you can 6R, the aversion.
I think that.
Yeah, I was sitting the other day, and what I realized was this stuff can run very deep. I was just sort of hesitating. I'll see if I can say this quickly. I remember my birth. It was in a therapy session, and we were doing some deep regression stuff, and I felt like I was slipping back into this kind of cold, clammy place. And then I sort of emerged out into light, and there was like nobody there. There was this guy in a white coat who probably would have rather been playing golf that morning. and I was like terribly alone. And I just took all that as projection. This is like, you know, there were images and stuff I felt. And so I told my mother about it, and she said to me that, you know, she paused and she said, yeah, back when I was born, they used scopolamine, which is a drug which blocks short-term memory. And the idea there is that if the woman is in pain, but she doesn't remember being in pain a moment before, then it doesn't build. And so she said, you know, that she really wasn't there when I was born, because she was on this stuff and it was just completely out of it. And so there was something about all that was just, you know, rooted in this very deep early experience. And our mind reorganizes itself so much in the first 5 years. You know, we just don't have ordinary memories of that stuff. But as I could feel in me this kind of tense, scared, alone place that felt just intolerable, and just kind of softened and opened up into it, you know, over time it began to dissipate and just got easier and easier and easier to be with. This is all to say that we can have experiences and energies running through our system that go back so far back that we're not going to remember them in any normal way, but can have an impact on our system. And whether they're actual memories, like they might have been in my case, or just metaphors for things that happen to us, as we open up and relax into those, even the ones that seem intolerable, what we find, well, I'll just say it flat out. This is sort of a claim on my part, but I've seen it myself and others, that we never experience anything that we can't handle. The mind is incredible. If it's more than we can handle, it'll just shut it out. But if we can experience something, we can actually handle it. And so there are times, you know, my deep practice where I get in a place which just feels, you know, kind of intolerable. And if I just sort of relax and open to it, it's not like everything suddenly becomes magically wonderful, but the fear and the edginess will gradually just drain out of it, and then it just becomes okay. Well, I'm sorry, there was a lot into that. It might take a long time to unpack, more than we have, but it's to say that our system really knows how to untangle itself. And if we can find ways to stay grounded and present, it will untangle itself, including in ways that we don't imagine going into it. That's a lot to go into in the last 2 minutes. So, any questions about that? I have come to believe in what I would call a kind of a reverse paranoia. You know, it's like the universe is really out to get us enlightened. You know, and it's hard to see it, but as we open up into, and say, feelings that seem so difficult, and you know, and the ones that are just sort of blatantly difficult, those are actually easy. It's the little edgy ones. You know, it's the stone in your shoe. It's a little bit of irritation and stuff. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but it kind of wears us down. And what happens, I think, as the practice goes deeper, at first you're trying to get rid of all that stuff, and then you realize that sometimes that there's energy that's caught in that. And so I get into this place that feels to me sort of like a kamikaze. You know, if it hurts, you know, that's something I really need to relax into, open up and open up. And it can be difficult for a while, but I've just got so much mileage out of that. To just trust what's there and to open up, to 6R it, you know, if you need to get the aversion out of it, So recognize what's there, release it, let it be what it is, relax any tension in it. That's the core of the Buddha's teachings.
Mm-hmm.
That's the absolute core of it, is that tanha is to be abandoned,
Mm-hmm.
is a term in there. If there's tension in there, you just relax into it, and that can be scary. But if you just kind of breathe and stay grounded, recognize, release, relax, and then bring in gently some uplifted qualities to fill the vacuum and go right back to it. It just, it untangles the tangles. It untangles the tangles.
With that, thank you so much. This is such a really wonderful. Austin, you want to say something?
Yeah, I just, thank you, Ken, for organizing this meeting, and thanks, Doug, for coming and sharing your wisdom with us. It was great to hear your perspective on all this, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.